Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third installment of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce 2021 Federal Candidate Forums. I'm going to start out today by letting you know that today's session is being recorded. It's going to be posted on our website later this week. We'd also like to thank Rogers TV for recording the series. Each session is going to air on Rogers TV, Channel 10 in Fredericton at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on the day following the recording. All four are also going to run twice consecutively on Saturday, beginning at 1 p.m. and again at 6 p.m. Check out their website for full details. And I would ask that in order to facilitate the taping, we'd ask people to turn off their cameras. So welcome again. My name is Krista Ross. I'm CEO at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. And this week we are virtually hosting 4 of the candidates in the Fredericton riding. You can still register for tomorrow's final forum on our website. A link is going to be placed in the chat box. And we really appreciate the participation of the candidates. We know their schedules are very full from morning until night, especially this week as we approach Election Day on Monday. I would also encourage everyone to visit the website wechoosegrowth.ca, and you can check out the set of federal business priorities, which is a collaboration between the Chambers of Commerce of Fredericton, St. John, and Moncton, along with the New Brunswick Business Council, the Conseil économique de Nouveau-Brunswick, and the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association. That link, of course, will also appear in the chat as well. So today, it's my pleasure to welcome Shawn Oldenburg. He's the candidate for the New Democratic Party of Canada. After I introduce Shawn, he's going to provide some opening comments, and then we're going to follow that with a Q&A. We have had some member questions submitted in advance, and I'm also going to take questions that you submit in the chat box. We're going to do our best to get through as many questions as possible in the hour that we have today. Please note that only Shawn and myself will have our mics unmuted during the forum. So again, welcome Shawn. Shawn Oldenburg lives in Fredericton with his wife Cindy and teenage daughter. They also have 2 adult sons that live in New Brunswick. He's worked for Canada Post in various roles for 30 years, and he's been a mail carrier for 13 years. Shawn's a proud member of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, and he's running for the NDP because he believes the people of Fredericton need a real choice for change. Shawn enjoys meeting constituents and discussing what the NDP's Ready for Better vision means for this riding. He says the most concerning issue for Fredericton is healthcare, specifically the shortage of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers. So we look forward to hearing more about Shawn's vision and Shawn's ideas during this session. So without further ado, I hand the floor over to Shawn Oldenburg.
Thank you, Krista. I appreciate that. First, let me say thank you to everybody for inviting me. I am Shawn Oldenburg, the NDP candidate for Fredericton. Just to start off, it's very important to me and the party that all voices are heard. That means all workers, all seniors, all young people, and everybody needs to be appreciated. We're all ready for this pandemic to be over. We want to feel safe. We want to see our loved ones, and we look forward to the future. We want to look forward to a bright future. The pandemic's been hard on all of us, some more than others. The seniors, those below poverty levels, and people like that. The homeless has been critically terrible for, but there are many groups who it's been hard for, but we're all in it together as Canadians. Trudeau offered a $1,000 CERB to replace the EI benefit for unemployed workers. The NDP increased it. Jagmeet Singh pushed for it to be doubled and extended, and furthermore carried it on to more people who may not otherwise qualify for unemployment insurance. The Artist Society, gig workers perhaps who didn't have the hours. The NDP made sure to get that CERB help to everybody. Trudeau only wanted a 10% wage subsidy, and the NDP got it to 75%. And that had to be great for businesses to be able to get through this. And then there's O'Toole. Well, the Conservatives throughout this whole pandemic have been silent. They haven't offered anything constructive. The only thing they've offered is criticism. So they couldn't back up anything. The New Democrats fought for you during the pandemic. They fought for everybody. Everybody in Canada we fought for, and we've always done that because we are a Labour Party. We take care of working people. That's what we do. We're different than the other parties. We don't have pockets to fill. We don't deal in that. The other two parties can deal with that. We'd rather take care of the people for the people. The billionaires and corporation, they profited from this pandemic, and we know that. They should pay for the recovery, not us. Billionaire wealth since March of 2020 went up $78 billion, while the rest of us lost more than we're used to losing. Some of us really suffered, and some of us don't know if we'll get out of this okay. That's the reality of Canada. We're not sure. We lost jobs we might not get back. Nearly 100,000 Canadian women left the workforce during this to not return. If elected, the NDP will be investing in healthcare, pharmacare, affordable housing, and childcare to take care of people. It builds an economy that works better for everybody. Making employment insurance work better for you, ensuring more accessible job training for the future and lifelong learning for all. In good faith, undertaking important work of reconciliation with true nation-to-nation partnership, true nation-to-nation partnership. Enough talk, let's get together and fix however we may be able to fix the situation. Combating the climate crisis that creates good jobs in a green environment where people in the fossil fuel industry, those employees can actually transition with their skill set into the new green economy. So nobody would be left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shawn, for your opening remarks. And I am going to begin posing some of the questions that were submitted to us in advance of the meeting. So one of the things you addressed in your opening remarks was CERB and enhanced EI. And you talked about the NDP working hard to increase that and extend that. One of the things we hear from small businesses who are members of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce is that the current programs seem to be also providing a disincentive for people to return to work. How would you address that issue or answer that question?
That is a good point, and it's kind of complicated. That it's not a wage shortage, or it's a wage shortage. Sorry, it's not a labor shortage. And the thing with the CERB is money got out quickly, and perhaps some people were able to survive off that. Some people were not. So basically, they have to have incentives to get back to work. With a guaranteed income, right now, if the CERB is still going and you're making more than you did working, and now you have your children at home, well, it's a win-win, but that has come to an end. So now what? How do you recover from that? If you didn't plan ahead to an uncertain future, and who knows, we're heading into the fourth wave right now of COVID, will there be a fifth wave? We have to plan for the future. We can't just think about what's good tomorrow. We have to think long-term. And that's how I think. It's long-term. If it helps us tomorrow, will it continue to help us long-term? What's good for me tomorrow, is it good for my kids? And I want them to know that in the future, it will be okay. There is something to look forward to. So yeah, the CERB did create a little bit of problem, but you know what? It got there.
So just as a statistic, in June of 2019, between June of 2019 and June of this year, there were 30,000 more people in our province collecting EI. So it is more than a little problem. It's a big problem when we have employers struggling for labor. That leads me to my next question. One of the hardest hit industries is tourism, and they've been hit not just with labor challenges, but obviously with the inability for people to travel and so on. They have been really drastically hit. So what would the NDP party do to support the New Brunswick tourism industry to get back on their feet?
Yeah, again, a good question. They need to incentivize the people to get back to work, increasing the wages, subsidies for small business. We need programs that take care of these people to get them back to work, where they can see it will take care of them once you throw in healthcare, affordable daycare. It's all part of the big picture for the future for everybody. It's a process that has to happen in order if we can move forward and move forward together.
You have mentioned healthcare in your comments as well, and that's an issue certainly that we're dealing with. There was a public opinion poll released earlier this week by the Canadian Medical Association saying that Canada's healthcare system, Canada's healthcare system, the number one area requiring federal investment, it's challenged with a systemic issues. So how would your party address those challenges?
Yeah, it's things like Clinic 554 here in Fredericton. That clinic was closed down, and not just the fact that it was a clinic that offered a variety service for abortions, for trans health. It was a pandemic, and ultimately, it's a clinic that closed. Put that on top of our emergency rooms are now reduced hours. It's hard to find a clinic here that's open. Most people do not have a doctor that's easily accessible, if they even have one. What that did, it created a snowball effect where now the people that were going to Clinic 554 are going on a waiting list. So the waiting list is even higher. We've got Trudeau's neglected the healthcare. Let's face it. He's going back, implementing Harper's cuts. It's not taking care of people. An unhealthy society is possibly good for the huge pharmacare companies, because let's face it, if we're all healthy and taken care of, it kind of makes that a little bit of a challenge. We have pharmacare to take care of the people, dental care, mental health care. And there is a lot of roadblocks with getting money to the provinces, and that has to be addressed.
I guess my next question is related to that. Given the exponential increase in health costs as people age, do you believe that federal health transfers should be weighted to account for the aging population and older provinces like New Brunswick?
Absolutely. Can we start that tomorrow? This has to be addressed today. Seniors don't want to wait to find out if there's going to be a government in power who will say, we've just put $30 million into looking into this to see how we can best do it. So that doesn't help anybody. We want help yesterday. There has to be, if you have a guaranteed living income, if you have guaranteed care for seniors, if you take the for-profit out of long-term housing, again, it's a snowball effect. This is a huge package. It takes care of things from the ground up. It's the foundation of Canada we have to think about. Our foundation has huge cracks in it. They've been put in there for the past 70 years. Everybody just goes to the second floor, doesn't even look at what's holding it up. Well, the pandemic has shown us there's not a lot holding this up. The only sure thing we can count on is the Canadian people. So that is that.
Thank you so much. One of the areas that our members have talked about when it comes to labor shortages and trying to find people is that affordable housing and housing in general is a challenge for their employees. So how does your party intend to support first-time home buyers and even new Canadians, newcomers that are struggling to find housing, struggling to find resources to meet their needs? Would you look at relaxing the mortgage stress test? Would you look at reinstating the 30-year insured mortgages?
Yes, absolutely. You're right. It is a big problem, and I would reinstate that absolutely. With wages not going up proportionately to housing prices, even 30 years is kind of a stretch if people looked at their bank accounts. You know, a vote for me is a time for change. This is the whole point of the NDP. We need to make this better and more accessible for people. Housing, to get people into affordable housing, we need more affordable housing. And there used to be a plan for subsidized housing or a housing plan that they scrapped in the 80s. Well, I don't know what they thought would happen by scrapping it. That's like saying, well, we'll get rid of it and the plan and the problem will go away because they're not big business. They'll just keep working and we'll take care of it that way. But you have to take care of the people, and that's, you know, we have to subsidize the housing and make it affordable and make it easier.
Would your government implement a national housing roundtable with working with all levels of government to address this issue?
Absolutely. I believe that's the only way anything can get done. I'm just, well, I'm a letter carrier. That's my profession. I don't pretend to know the solutions, but I know the best way to deal with problems is talking to the people. And that should be easy since government represents the people.
So as it relates to housing, there's also an issue in our community and in many communities across the country with regards to homelessness. And we've also touched a bit on healthcare. What assistance could you offer in relation to mental health and homelessness? Because those tend to be under healthcare, which is a provincial responsibility. Would you provide funding? Would you support organizations that are mitigating homelessness? And how would you support those trying to get out of homelessness?
I totally understand. Lots of funding, lots of funding. Healthcare is, without healthcare, we have nothing. There has to be healthcare. With the homeless, I'm not a professional, but what has to be done is they need to be taken care of. If they can get a doctor, if they can get treatment they need, if they can get the drugs they need, if they can see their government is trying to take care of them and help them. And that works huge with people. I have days where I think, why isn't the government helping these people? Well, they're not talking to them, so they're not trying to help. They're just letting it go.
Going to turn our attention a bit now to immigration. New Brunswick has a low retention rate. New Brunswick has a low retention rate for entrepreneurial immigrants. Understanding that the province leads that file, how would you, if you were elected as our MP, work with the province to ensure that we are supporting immigrant investors?
Well, keep in mind, we need higher, better union jobs, and New Brunswick has the distinction of being the poorest province in the country. It's not something to be proud of. Do we have to be the poorest? No, there's no reason for it. There are too many things going on and not taking care of us, and nobody's listening. You'll see if you look online, they group us, they will say the Atlantic provinces, not New Brunswick. unless something is specifically in New Brunswick, but we are the Atlantic provinces. We need compassionate, fair immigration system. Right now, I don't believe New Brunswick would be that appealing to retain people because there are no doctors and there's too many problems that we need to fix and not being taken advantage of. So New Brunswick needs to get out of that situation. So basically, Trudeau talked a good game on immigration, but he's still keeping families apart and refugees behind. So we're the NDP. We focus on keeping the families together through faster reunification, including the grandparents, helping immigrants contribute to the economy by improving foreign credential recognition, and that's a big one. Doing our fair share to welcome refugees fleeing violence and persecution, and protecting the rights of foreign workers. Now, COVID did throw a pickle into this and delays, but it's time, it still needs to be taken care of. We can't ignore it.
One of the areas that our chamber has worked extensively with the federal government is with regards to international students, those that are here as newcomers, and they're putting down roots, so they may be an easier group to retain in our area. But work experience for them is a really key thing. One of the policies that's currently in place is that the Canada Summer Jobs programs and many student work placement programs are not available to international students. Tell me your position on that and what you would do to fix it.
Yeah, they should actually be included in that because they are here. There would be nothing worse than being away from your family to learn and not be treated as one of us. You're in our country, it's Canada. Enjoy what Canada can be and enjoy what New Brunswick can be. So that has to be high on the list. There's no reason to exclude them. Once we start excluding people, we're not taking care of people. And there is no free labor. It's not, they must, if they want to work, they should be able to and be able to be taken care of for it. Let me think, just give me one sec to gather my marbles. Yeah, there has to be, if they see they're being treated well here, they would stay here and raise families here. And we need that. We need that encouragement. We need better pay. We need fair pay for them. It's all cyclical. It's a snowball effect. See, everything works to everybody's advantage, and it's ultimately the people, and that includes students.
The Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program is now becoming permanent. Do you think it should be expanded? Can we settle more newcomers than we already are?
I believe we can. I think it should be extended, and I do think it is, but you need better pay and fair pay. That has to be part of the attraction of people. They want to come to be able to survive, not come here and have to worry and wonder what tomorrow will bring.
I'm going to turn our attention to a question that was received in advance with regards to R&D funding. New Brunswick receives about 43% less R&D funding from the federal government than the national average. Should the government seek to close this gap in the next mandate? And if so, how?
I'm going to have to say off the top of my head, let me just check what I've got here. Yeah, we should have it, I guess. It's, again, I'm learning going through all this, but yeah, there has to be more fluid money going around Canada. There is a lot of hurdles, as you say, like with healthcare transfers, et cetera, but it does have to be a little bit more clear that this can be accessible. We should we should have developed our own vaccine actually for COVID. That would have created a lot for Canada. But, there's things that can be done. And I just think everything takes a little bit too much time and there's too many hurdles.
We just received a message or a question in the chat, and it says, I'm going to read it. I understand that if the NDP were to form government, you have a plan to address the climate crisis. However, if the NDP is not in government or opposition, what can your party do to push the government to meet Canada's Paris climate goals and help ensure the future of humanity?
Well, again, that goes back to somebody like Trudeau. He talks about it, but it doesn't really mean it. One day he declared a climate emergency, the next day he bought a pipeline, right? O'Toole's plan really leans towards one way, and that's towards fossil. But with the NDP, our plan is to cut emissions by more than half to meet the 1.5 degree target that's been set out. Create hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs, investing in clean energy efficient and affordable homes, electric transit, and zero emissions vehicles, and retrofit buildings across the country. And this can all be done. Some people I've heard that the NDP doesn't really have a climate platform. Well, we're not promising you the world. So in 3 years, we can say, well, it cost us $20 billion to get here, and we still don't know. And that's what's been happening.
So one part of the question was that you do have a plan, but what if you're not elected to government or are the official opposition? How can you leverage your ideas with a different party in power?
That's a fantastic question and also a bragging point. The NDP has gotten so much done since we've started. We don't actually need to be empowered to get our word out and help Canadians. And you can look at the record books, our consistency and what we've gotten for Canadians. I'm pretty proud of it. I don't have to be defensive. The other two parties are too busy arguing with themselves, and the NDP has, an NDP opposition would be great. Don't get me wrong. But we've done pretty good for a party in our position right now. And that is what we do, and we'll continue to do it.
Thank you. I have another question that was submitted. Do you think provinces like New Brunswick that are more rural and have fewer ways to mitigate fossil fuel use, like public transit, should have policies such as the Clean Fuel Standard tailored for us, rather than a national one-size-fits-all approach?
Ultimately, yeah, you're right. We are very rural, and there'd have to be numbers crunched. I would not make that decision on my own. We are very rural. We are the poorest province in the country. How can we keep up with people in Ontario if they have extra costs for this or requirements? If you're told next year or in 2 years, you'll have to have an electric vehicle. I can't even buy an electric vehicle. What will I do? I have no way to do that. So, it's got to be, there's things in place like the NDP would have, like a transit system and hybrid electric to reduce this stuff and make it easier on the people. But again, it's all about the people, and that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you. I'm going to ask another question, circling back around to workforce. Many people are continuing to work virtually, and downtowns across the country are struggling to recover from the pandemic and from public health restrictions. What role do you see federal government playing to ensure the economic viability of downtowns?
Well, the pandemic has only made things worse. It feels like the system is rigged and impossible to get ahead. High levels of stress, like it's not just about finances. There's long hours, people working 2, maybe 3 jobs, less time with family and friends, and health problems. Over the last 6 years, we've learned a lot about Mr. Trudeau. He's put CEOs and the wealthiest ahead of the middle class families time and time again. He's offered Canadians the bare minimum while protecting the rich. It's one country, two pandemics, breaks for the wealthiest, and no recovery in sight for our youth or low-wage earners. We'll use the wealth tax and a wealth and excess profit tax to invest in people. The pharmacare saves the average family $500 per month, taking climate crisis and create jobs in every community, and forgiving up to $20,000 in student loan debt. And will subsidize businesses, especially in downtown.
So when you talk about subsidizing businesses, especially in downtowns, tell me what that looks like.
Well, just basically, it would be the subsidies for a small business. If you're a small business owner, you're struggling right now, what with the restrictions and all that, but helping them stay afloat. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have the exact numbers because that wouldn't be my area. But if you couple it all together, costs for people in downtown areas, your mom and pop stores, et cetera, who get taken over by big stores who go out and people have to get to those. If people are making a decent wage and have less costs in their lives, then probably some of the challenges businesses have in downtown areas, which are getting pretty empty, they could be able to afford to move forward keepily and just keep the programs that we had during the pandemic. Keep them. We can do it. We know we can. We've been doing it. Let's just keep doing it.
I think a challenge some business owners might tell you with the suggestion of paying people more is that already they're struggling to pay their rent, to keep their suppliers up to date and so on, and increasing the cost of wages in their business when often they aren't even taking a salary themselves as owner is a very challenging thing. I want to ask you another question. We think places like New Brunswick, Fredericton in particular, that have a high quality of life, we can attract remote workers from across the globe. So how do you see the federal government or your party leveraging this opportunity for our region?
Back and forth with my notes here. Yeah, newcomers played a critical role during COVID-19. Canada is stronger when we keep families together. Trudeau, yeah, we have to keep families, or he's keeping families apart and taking way too long and leaving newcomers behind. So the NDP is just going to focus on keeping families together, helping immigrants contribute to the economy by improving foreign credentials, protect the rights of temporary foreign workers.
Going to ask you a little bit about fiscal planning. What is your party's plan for pandemic spending in the short term?
Well, basically, we'll be taxing the ultra wealthy and making corporations that made too much money off this pandemic pay their fair share. Canadians, everybody has been paying their fair share this whole time. Corporations and the ultra wealthy need to pay their fair share. That's all we're asking. Pay your fair share. We've all been doing it. We're all used to it. You've got billionaires. Their wealth since March 2020 went up $78 billion. How can that be okay? And they won't pay their fair share? That is all we're asking.
So what federal supports or programs or funding do you think will be needed for economic recovery?
Well, there has to be supports for every person. And the wealth tax, excess profit tax, will allow that to happen. And let's face it, government spending, it goes in so many different places, maybe irresponsibly. What we need to do is focus our efforts that end up helping the Canadian people. Less on research, more on talk, but action speaks louder than words. So you can propose whatever scenario there is, but we know in the platforms of the last 30, 40 years, not a lot happens with those platforms. They often get forgotten. Look at pharmacare. That was supposed to happen. Trudeau O'Toole voted against it. Well, how can you not let Canadians have affordable health care? It doesn't make sense. So as a letter carrier, obviously, I'm not going to be the Minister of Finance. I will certainly surround myself with smarter people than me to actually crunch the numbers, because I don't pretend to have the solution, but I know me, the NDP, we just do what's best for Canadians.
One of the things that you mentioned, Shawn, early on was about people requiring healthcare or childcare, rather, in order to enable them to go back to work. I'm interested in your views or your party's views on the Liberal childcare plan.
Well, yeah, it's a good plan. It's $10 a day childcare. It could be better if you're getting somebody in Ontario that has $10 a day childcare. That's a huge break. I don't know the cost of childcare in New Brunswick. Maybe it's not as great of a value. I have no clue. But I think it should actually be proportionate. If people here would be happy with $10 a day, great. But let's just do it. Quit talking about it. Do it.
Shawn, you also mentioned credential recognition when you were talking about newcomers and that sort of thing. But we also have some credential recognition that is a problem even from province to province. What are some of the other interprovincial trade barriers that you'd like to see eliminated?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to pull the letter carrier card. As a working guy, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But you're right. With the credentials, I know people who have come here from other countries as doctors. They're driving a cab to try and get reinstated. Well, and let's say if it were the days before the internet, they knew Canada was a great country, which it is. They come here and find out, well, I'm not a doctor. Sorry, family, I'll do something. There has to be a more, if not only nationally, international recognition and help people move throughout the world and be able to just make it fair, make it equal for everybody. We're all in this together, whether you like it or not. We have to work together, and working together can accomplish a lot of things.
Shawn, I know when you're talking about taxing the ultra rich and corporations, I know that you don't mean the 1,000 or so businesses that are members of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, those small businesses that are mostly locally owned. But I would ask you, other than those types of taxes, how would you see your party managing the growing debt and deficit that will need to be taken care of in the long term?
Well, that is a good question. See, people are working harder and harder to make ends meet every day. The economy is rigged to help the rich. For example, Trudeau talks a good game, but he voted against the 1% tax on wealth over 20 million and refused to tax companies that have profiteered over the pandemic. Even Biden is raising taxes on the wealthy. So that should tell you something. He stood by while grocery chains made record profits and took back the pandemic pay from their frontline workers. So their day-to-day job, they got a raise one day and lost it the next day. That's insecurity. Paying Paying for the pandemic, we'll cut services. We do have a plan with the NDP. Ensuring the ultra-rich and corporations pay their fair share, getting rid of tax loopholes for the richest and big corporations, and getting tough on tax evasion and tax avoidance. It's all doable, and it should be done.
I'm going to circle back around to something else that you said in your opening comments. What are the next steps that you think the federal government should take regarding reconciliation?
That's an excellent question. First Nations people have not been treated well. And first of all, get some clean water to them so they can drink. I saw it's 2026 is now the date that they will all have it. So are they supposed to hold tight for another 5 years? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Do it. You said you'd do it, so just get it done. Truth and reconciliation has to be a nation to nation true talk. That's the only way it can happen. I can't make a decision. I would need to know what they want. How do we move forward? You give them funding, you give them safe housing, clean drinking water, but yesterday, clean drinking water. Do whatever you can. This is critical. These are people's lives. They do not deserve this. If Ottawa didn't have drinking water today, you can be sure it would be fixed by tonight. There's no doubt in that. Respectable, safe health care for First Nations, and the justice and the court battles and the underfunding of Indigenous children's services. That this is a step forward. We need to open a discussion that is truthful and meaningful, not with underlying intentions.
Thank you, Shawn, for that answer. We have just a few moments left, and I'm going to take this opportunity to turn the mic over to you and let you have the final word for our guest today, and for those that are watching this televised. And thanks again to Rogers for doing that for us. So, Shawn, I'll turn the mic over to you and invite you to have the last word.
Well, thank you very much again for having me. The New Democrats are different. We're different from the others because we are the working people. We always have been, and that is what we continue to do. From Tommy Douglas, Jack Layton, my motivators, we know good jobs that treat people fairly make a real difference to Canadian families, and that setting Canadians up for success in the work world of the future benefits us all. New ways of thinking can help shape the recovery from this COVID-19 crisis, help make our economy fair, and deliver the results we all want. We've seen over the past 6 years a Liberal Prime Minister who loves to say the right thing, to promise to address the issues to all Canadians, but with no intention of delivering them. You can refer to his platforms and what he actually does. He's been promising pharmacare, childcare for decades. He was supposed to do it, and he's not, and this will continue. He could have the greatest platform today. It won't do anything tomorrow. May 2020, 15 months ago, Mr. Singh called on Justin Trudeau to introduce paid sick leave. He said provinces need to look at the way to deliver sick leave directly through employers, which the federal government can't do. Then in August, he said, yeah, we can do that. So it's all what he wants to do. It has nothing to do with whatever rules that we are unaware of. We have a Conservative leader who wants to convince you that he's dragging his party kicking and screaming into the 21st century, all while the majority of his caucus contradict him on key social issues. Every day he talks about privatization and your health care. Creating a system where the rich can pay to jump in line. We have a record of fighting for you. Instead of protecting billion-dollar companies that profited off the pandemic but paid no tax, we have fought for you and your family, and we will continue to do so, pushing the Liberal government on supports that help regular Canadians, and small businesses get through the pandemic. Get the national housing strategy back in place. Repair all the cuts that have been made in our foundation. The cracks need to be addressed, and honestly, there's a lot of them. So if we're not looking at them and talking about them, they're just going to get bigger. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Oldenburg, our NDP candidate for Fredericton. I know that you've made the very difficult decision of suspending your door knocking for the campaign due to the rise in cases. And I'm glad that we were able to give you this opportunity for a live, not in person, but a live virtual presentation to our community. And as mentioned before, we will be sharing this with our membership through our website, and Rogers will be broadcasting it as well. So thank you very much for your time today. Understand that this is an incredibly busy time for candidates in an election. And so I thank you for that. I know everyone in attendance is better informed about your policies and platforms because of it. At this time, I'd like to invite everybody to take advantage of attending our final candidate forum, which is tomorrow. It's at 1 p.m. It's with Jenica Atwin, the Liberal candidate. And of course, please don't forget to go out and vote between now and September 20th. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.